Welcome, adventurers, to almost the last video in the class comparison video series where we take a look at two classes in Pathfinder 2nd Edition and see how they stack up against each other. Today we are taking a look at two somewhat oddball magical classes, the Oracle and the Summoner. Why these two? Well, they both are charisma-based, they are both spontaneous spellcasters, and they both ranked at the bottom of my class ranking list. The bottom two. But I promise it's not all bad. So we'll get that bad stuff out of the way first. Then we will move on to why a lot of people actually call these two out as being their favorite. All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room. I have been critical of both of these classes. Let's talk about why I still do think that they suffer a bit, but then we will get around to what I do like about each of these classes and why I think they are better than maybe I have given them credit for. Starting with the Oracle. The Oracle receives their spell casting powers from a curse. When they use their revelation spells, which are their focus spells, they activate that curse. The curse has multiple stages, and you actually advance the stages of the curse by casting more of, or using your focus spell more than one time. But refocusing can actually decrease the curse, but only to the first stage of the curse, and then you can only completely erase your curse with a full night's rest. The curses add a ton of different statuses, buffs, debuffs, anything in between, depending on your Oracle Mystery, which is your subclass choice. And here is where I have had some issues with the Oracle before. I do think that sometimes those debuffs that you get don't really seem worth the buffs that you eventually get. And I also just think that it's pretty complicated to keep track of the various buffs and debuffs that your curse grants you. In the end, I do think that this means that the Oracle is a relatively complex class, and that sometimes those mechanics, those benefits you get, simply are not worth the complexity. Sometimes. So what about the Summoner? Well, the Summoner, first we should know, is a tandem pair of the Summoner, the sort of main character, although maybe not the main character, and their summoned creature called an Eidolon. And here's where I have the first issue. The word Eidolon. That's how it's supposed to be pronounced, Eidolon, and it looks like Eidolon to me, and that's how I hear it pronounced more. And this isn't Paizo's fault, it's not their word, but man, I don't like it. And that's like the core mechanic of this class is a word that I simply don't like to say. Second, I do think that this class complicates the already somewhat complicated nature of having familiars, companions, summoned creatures, which are used by multiple other classes or ancestries, and now you are adding Eidolons to that, which is unique just to the Summoner, and I almost think I'd rather not have this third or fourth tier of partner in crime. And then third, this is more of a personal preference, but I do think it plays out mechanically a little bit too, that I would rather have one really good character, really strong character that I get to concentrate on, and not have two slightly underpowered characters that I'm splitting my actions in between. That's mostly a personal preference, but as I said, I do think that the way just sometimes the way that the math works out in the system, where you really need every +1 to matter, that if you were a character who is, just slightly under in some ways, it really is tough, even if you have two characters. So those are the issues that I've had with the Summoner. But this is mostly my personal opinion, maybe with a little objective input and some agreement from others. I would say that in my class ranking video, there was generally agreement about the overall ranking of these two, even if there were some disagreements about individual aspects of the score that I gave them, which I completely agree with most of that criticism. So there are proponents of each of these classes, and they do raise some really good points. There are very good things about both the Oracle and the Summoner, and I'm finding a lot of things to enjoy about them. So let's take a look at those. Starting with the Oracle and their focus spells, their revelation spells. First of all, they have 2 revelation spells and 2 focus points. One focus spell is unique to each subclass, to each of the mysteries. The other is a focus spell that is associated to a domain that is associated with the mystery, so you get a little bit of choice here. And these are the same domain spells that both the cleric and the champion have access to, so they're not totally unique to you, but it's still 2 different focus spells and 2 focus points to begin with. Considering that focus spells are kind of your mid-level spells, they're not quite as powerful as spells from the spell slots, but they are more powerful than cantrips. Having 2 to begin with and having 2 focus points, so you can use 2 of them in an encounter, does make you pretty formidable. And some of the unique revelation spells are really quite cool. Ashen Wind can sicken creatures in a 10-foot burst. That is an amazing debuff. Soul Siphon, it can leave a creature drained, in addition to taking damage, and then giving that damage to you in the form of temporary hit points. And then Spray of Stars can actually do some damage and dazzle creatures in a 15-foot cone. I would say that all of the revelation spells, on average, are better than most of the focus spells available to any other magical class in the system. So having better than average focus spells and having more of them, or at least being able to cast them more often, is pretty fantastic. And then as you level up as an Oracle, you can actually choose to gain even more focus spells specific to your mystery. The Life Oracle, for example, can gain life-giving form, becoming a beacon of healing energy. You can then touch a living creature using a single interact action to restore 6d8 hit points to it. Wow! And then another really positive thing about the Oracle is that, yes, the curses do give you some negative effects, but they give you positives as well. That Life Oracle, for example, is often used as a good example because as they advance their curse, they can actually roll d12s rather than d8s on heal spells. The Tempest Curse will surround you in swirling wind, giving you some protection to ranged attacks, which is very good because you'll probably be at range. And then when you can level up and to get access to the 3rd level of your curse, well, the curses are just insane at this point. The Lore Oracle, for example, at the 3rd level of their curse, can understand all languages. Every single one. They can't talk, and there are a bunch of other negatives, but still, they can understand every language in the system. That is wild. So now onto the Summoner and the good things that the Summoner has going for them. Well, given that you are 2 characters, you can occupy 2 places on the battlefield. And with the way that you interact with your Eidolon using Act Together, you will have 4 actions per round rather than the normal 3. In a game where both the action economy, maybe especially action economy, but also positioning are very vital, you have an automatic advantage. And the connection between you and your Eidolon is really cool. It definitely helps distinguish the Eidolon from the companions and familiars that other classes and characters will have access to. Something you can do with your Eidolon is share senses. You can hear and see through your Eidolon. That's pretty amazing. You can also alter your Eidolon through your spells. You have link spells, which are your focus spells. You start off with the Evolution Surge link spell, and you can give your Eidolon an extra boost, like giving it low light vision, or making it aquatic, or just giving them a boost to their speed. You also have link cantrips, which are cantrips that interact with you in your Eidolon, so you can use it as many times as you want, because that's what you do with cantrips. Starting with Boost Eidolon, where you give your Eidolon a boost to their damage rolls. So between the Oracle focus spells, the good things that come from the Oracle curses, and the amazing interaction between the summoner and their Eidolon, there are plenty of things to be excited about with each of these classes. In that last section, we talked a lot about focus spells. Now let's talk about the other spells that each of these classes have access to. Starting with the Oracle, they are a divine caster, and they are what you'd consider a full caster. They have 5 cantrips, and they have the pretty standard 2 spells at level 1, 3 at level 2, and so on. There's kind of not much else to say there, it's just sort of perfectly standard. The Summoner, however, is what you would consider a limited caster. They do have 5 cantrips, yes, but they have a single spell at level 1 and just 2 spells at level 2. And as they level up, they actually lose access to lower level spells as they progress. And, this does make sense after all. If you were both a full caster and had the most powerful sidekick in the game, well, that just wouldn't be fair. I should also mention that while the Oracle is only a divine caster, the Summoner's tradition actually changes by their choice of Eidolon. So if you want just a little bit of magic, and you want it to be arcane or occult or primal, well, the Summoner is going to be a good choice for you. This does mean overall that if you are more interested in spellcasting as a character, the Oracle is going to be a much better choice with their extra focus spells and their full spellcasting ability. If casting isn't quite as important to you and you really like having that partner in crime, well then I would say that the Summoner is for you. So we've only talked about magic so far. What about non-magical abilities? Melee damage. Well, the Oracle, kind of surprisingly, does have a really good option here. The Battle Oracle, one of the mysteries, gives you training in medium armor and training in martial weapons of a particular group of your choosing. And the mystery will actually give you some bonus damage as well as fast healing at the medium or the second stage. And remember, you still are a spellcaster on top of that, so it's a really good gish option. And the Summoner is actually a fairly melee/martial build to begin with. That's because the Eidolon is a creature that is, well, it's an upfront battle beast using unarmed attacks. They have pretty vicious attacks. They've got decent armor class, and they actually share a hit point pool with you, which is good considering that you have 10 hit points per level, which is a lot for a spellcasting type of class. And then remember that boost Eidolon cantrip that we talked about earlier. Remember, it's a single action and it's a cantrip, so you reasonably can use it pretty much every round to give that Eidolon a boost in an upfront battle. So if you want consistent upfront damage in addition to spellcasting, regardless of your subclass choice, well, the Summoner is a much better option for you. Most Oracles are pretty unideal in a brawl, but if you want to be particularly nasty, the Battle Oracle really is a good bet. Probably the biggest thing that these two classes have in common is that they are both premier role-playing classes. Most comments that I hear from people saying that the Oracle is their favorite class say so because of the extreme role-playing potential that the Oracle has to offer. The curses just have so much flavor in them. It's probably the most role-playing built into any class mechanics of any class in the system. And with the Summoner, well, I always consider familiars and companions to be great boosts to role-playing, so of course the Eidolon is going to be a great boost to your role-playing as well. You have two nearly full characters that you are playing as, and then you have the interaction between them. Maybe you and your Eidolon are truly in sync, true partners. Maybe your Eidolon is very hard to control, very temperamental. Maybe your Eidolon is actually the star. Maybe the Summoner is. Either way, each of these classes is really a role player's dream. All right, adventurers, time to wrap this one up. These are two classes that stand out in the system, the Oracle and the Summoner. One is literally cursed with their powers, which leads to very powerful spellcasting, a pretty surprisingly decent melee option, tons of complex mechanics, but then just the most rich roleplay you could possibly imagine. The other needs to juggle two nearly equally powerful characters at once, also with a good mix of melee and magic and a lot of role-playing mixed in. Neither are super simple to pick up, but I do think that both can be incredibly rewarding, and of course they are rich with roleplay, which makes them a great option for many players out there. But what do you think, adventurers? Who thinks that the roleplay and the rewards of these classes make them excel, and who thinks that the mechanics maybe just bog them down a little bit too much? Let's talk about that in the comments. Until then, remember that the best way to make sure that your GM keeps all of their rulebooks with them at all times is to have both an Oracle and a Summoner in your party. Lots of specific mechanics to look up. Seriously.